lot of ground to cover in today's testimony in the Murdaugh murders trial, Billy, and I'm glad to welcome back into the studio trial attorney Carl B. Grant for some expert analysis. Carl, let's just start with the financial crimes because they have laid out a compelling case there, even though this case is about murder. But clearly the prosecution's goal is to say he was desperate, to look at everything that was at stake and to say that that led to murder. The question is, have they made a compelling case so far?
They made a compelling case, but the question is going to be, have they made too much of a case?
Yes.
Have they tilted those scales to the point that they've tilted into the land of being more prejudicial than probative? That's going to be the question for the appellate court to determine. Again, I go back to what I've said about the judge has a lot of discretion as the gatekeeper of the evidence, but that will be the salient question on appeal if and when that day comes.
Here's one of the highlights of the testimony today about the financial crimes from Alec Murdaugh's best friend, Chris Wilson. Take a listen.
He said he had a drug addiction, and then he admitted he had been stealing money, you know.
From who?
He, from his law firm and from clients.
Did he say?
And from, I mean, he didn't specifically spell any certain person out or any certain organization out, but he said, I've been stealing from the firm and from clients.
There you have his best friend saying, Alec Murdaugh told me that he had been stealing from the firm and his clients. This is yet another person that was connected very closely to him saying that Alec Murdaugh is a thief, and he admitted to that. How does the defense come back and still try to portray this honest family man?
Well, they're going to have a difficult time doing that, considering the litany of people they put on the stand to say that they were actually deceived by somebody that they were close to, that they worked with every day. His closest friend, Chris, was his best friend, that's my understanding. And he did not know him as close as he thought he did, and there were things that he was deceiving him about. So that's going to be very difficult to do.
So if you have people who have worked so closely with him, who really consider him members of their family, if you have his best friend also testifying for the prosecution, does Alec Murdaugh have to take the stand? I mean, who else can take the stand to try and make the case that he might be a liar and he might have committed financial crimes and even be a drug addict, but to try and convince the jury that he's not a murderer?
The only way that they could possibly do that is if he got on the stand, naturally, only if he's going to testify truthfully could he get on the stand. Now, you can try to rebuild him with character witnesses for his law-abidingness to say that he is a law-abiding person. However, that counters with everything else we've heard about him with regard to the financial crimes. So how much credibility will they have, even if they did get on the stand and say that?
After Chris Wilson's testimony today, there was a point where Dick Harpootlian, the defense, stood up and cross-examined Wilson and then turned around and asked Alec Murdaugh's surviving son, Buster, to stand up in the courtroom and had Chris to identify him. He kind of just left the open-ended question, is that his son? Can you stand up? And that was it. What is the defense trying to convey at this point by having Alec Murdaugh's son to stand up in court?
All of that, Billie Jean, is what we call courtroom drama. What you're trying to display there is, well, if my client really did kill this young man's brother with the son who's standing up, would he be sitting behind his father to show all of this support day after day? Would he be here and all of these family members day after day? So that's the purpose of having the son stand up, and anybody else who's there that they might want to display as showing support for their client. That's courtroom drama.
Okay. How convicting is it that at least 4 people now who are very close to Alec Murdaugh have confirmed they are 100% sure that it is his voice that they hear in that Snapchat video, coupled with the fact that he told other people that he never went to the kennels?
Oh, that's very problematic. Not just that there are 4 people, but who are these 4 people? 2 of his son's closest friends who are clearly familiar with his voice, and then the paralegal, Miss Griswold, who works with him every day. Clearly she knows his voice, and then most compellingly, his own law partner, Ronnie Crosby, to say, I am 100% sure. All 4 of these witnesses have said, I am 100% sure and certain that that's his voice on that Snapchat video about 4 to 5 minutes before the murders actually occurred. That's a problem.
And going back to the testimony from Shelley Smith, who was the caretaker of Alec Murdaugh's mother, how did it appear as though Alec Murdaugh may have been carrying a gun or rifle in the blue tarp or raincoat if he in his hands had it, especially when the defense objected that? Well,
the defense objected, but if you remember the testimony, Ms. Smith, I think her last name is, she actually said yes right after the defense objected. The jurors heard that yes. Even though the defense objected, the jurors heard that yes. So essentially becoming upon the defense counsel at that point to say, Your Honor, the witness answered our question even though we made an objection. We would ask that you strike that yes and give a curative instruction to the jury to disregard that yes as though she never said it.
So, Carl, give us some more insight about another dramatic moment that we saw play out in court really just a short time before we went on air. Mark Tinsley, who was an attorney in the Mallory Beach case for that family, made a contribution. I want everybody to follow me here. Made a contribution to a GoFundMe that had been set up for the caregiver, for Mrs. Smith. That GoFundMe was set up saying for the courage to tell the truth, and he made a $1,000 contribution. Went back in, took his name off so it will be an anonymous contribution, but he has confirmed he did in fact make it. The defense tried to get his testimony stricken based on that. They couldn't convince Judge Newman to do that. He did concede that it'll be great fodder for cross-examination, but give us some insight about how that plays out for the trial and possibility for appeal and also for the jury.
I don't see a basis to strike his testimony based upon the fact that he gave a donation to that GoFundMe page. I think the judge has it absolutely right. If that is an issue, then use it on cross-examination to impeach his credibility as a witness, but not a basis to actually strike his testimony.
Yeah, that was very interesting. A lot of people had questions about that, and that GoFundMe that we're told with Dick Harpootlian bringing it up, it just continues to get her more money at this point because they're talking about it. If attorneys advise against it, can Alec Murdaugh still take the stand in his own defense?
A defendant can take the stand in his own defense even if the lawyer says for him not to take the stand because that is his constitutional right. However, he can only take the stand if he's willing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If a lawyer knows that his client is going to fabricate, going to lie, or manufacture a defense while he's testifying, the lawyer cannot put the client on the stand because if so, the lawyer, him or herself, could face charges of suborning perjury, which is a felony. So if you know your client is going to lie based upon their confessions to you, even in the privacy of your own office, you cannot put the person on the stand.
I want you to know I caught that emphasis you put on the word felony. I caught that.
Yeah, yes.
Caught that. Carl, great insight as always. We appreciate you helping us walk through this trial because it can be confusing sorting out the testimony throughout the day, but this helps us to boil it down and to understand the importance of what has happened and what to expect next. So we appreciate your expertise very much.
Thank you.
And of course, Carl will be back here, same time and place tomorrow. For now, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.